Hey folks, what's up? So I was just was watching a Jimmy Dore video about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and he was saying like how he's so surprised how she was like, calling out the war hawks and the military industrial complex and like the graft and grift and whatever and of the Ukraine war in Congress, crazy MTG or whatever. But so, it's a good video. Like maybe Jimmy has to be who he is because he's kind of like, you know, if he was just me where I'm I already like don't never respected the ideas of like that, left and right in the modern context are a meaningful, uh are meaningful categories, at least in any moral sense or even much of any sense. It's like he's the guy who's just coming to the party where he's just realizing like, oh wait, the Democrats suck, and even the left generally, or a lot of the self-proclaimed leftists, a lot of them are hypocrites and scum. And actually, a lot of so-called right-wingers are more leftist than a lot of these so-called leftists. So that's what he's coming to realize, I guess. But it's something that I like knew, for a long time. Um, like certainly on gun rights, like I've always supported gun rights, just like all my heroes like Malcolm X and the Black Panthers and stuff like that. They always supported gun rights. They always they would certainly look with the ultimate hatred at any white so-called liberal trying to disarm black men. Um, as would I. So like for him, it's like, oh my God, MTG. I don't even know what he knows about her. I don't really know shit about her, but I think he's like kind of referring to her as crazy just because he sees like in his peripheral vision, that that's how she's always described. But I mean, honestly, that shouldn't, like, that's the reason I was kind of favorably disposed towards her, because even though I didn't know anything about her, all the worst people keep trashing her. Like, like they put me on all these stupid Democrat, mailing lists and stuff, like my emails. So kept getting all these stupid emails about donate money so you can stop MTG Marjorie Taylor Greene and her crazy blah blah blah. But like usually whenever I could actually find out anything that Marjorie Taylor Greene did to be called crazy, it was usually to support like bodily autonomy for vaccines or, something like good. So, like I'm not saying she is good, she might be controlled opposition as well, and she certainly sucks on a lot of issues, like she's not she's not being, she's waging war on truth when she calls the Democrats communists. That's, she always calls them communists. I mean, that's the funniest thing is like all these like populist right people, they call the capitalist overlords, the fascist monarchist overlords, communists. That's just I don't know. That contradiction at some point will come to a head. They're either going to realize that they've been on the wrong side in the class war, um, or that they've been wrong about socialism, or they're just going to go full right wing and then probably eventually like become Democrats like the Lincoln what are they called? Lincoln Project, scumbag, all the never Trumper Republicans. That's going to be them eventually if they, it's like I feel like everybody should just choose like choose to be with the people and human rights or just be a right wing, you know, fascist, anti-poor, you know, monarchist. So anyway, like you know, I don't, uh, yeah, like I don't trust Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, because obviously she's saying all this stupid McCarthyite rhetoric and you know, like border, you know, like they try to make the border into the thing because everything has to be like kind of nationalist and racial and whatever. So they're, you know, like she goes along with this idea that somehow the Democrats just have like open borders and Republicans just are like so strong on the border. But really, like Obama deported like so Obama and Biden like deported so many people. So, you know, again, that's just like it's like the abortion issue. Like it's just this, you know, it's used to distract people. Um, and abortion too, you know, like the Republicans. That's why you know like you can never fucking trust Democrats or Republicans to not rape you because they've shown like um you know every Democrat, basically almost every Democrat in office has been supporting vaccine mandates. So they clearly don't believe in consent. And every Republican wants to ban abortion. So they don't believe in consent. And, you know, like abortion is just one of those issues that it's so kind of like convoluted that it's just perfect for politicians to just endlessly divide people. Um, I mean, it's especially a good issue for the Republicans. You know, like the Democrats try to use it as their issue to raise money off and get votes, and sometimes that works, I guess. But it's even a better issue for the Republicans because then they get to pretend they care about, you know, that they value human life, and they get to paint the Democrats as, you know, and basically everybody left of, you know, Reagan as basically a mass murderer. So, you know, um, like anybody, if you don't want a woman thrown in jail for aborting like her rapist's baby, you're, they would consider you like a, you know, they would consider me probably a, um, you know, accessory to murder, mass murder. So fuck them, you know, like fuck the Democrats and the Republicans. I think they should be like hunted. I mean, I don't know. I think if anybody like would be shameless enough to say out loud that they're a Democrat or a Republican, should at the very least be like hated out of society, you know. And a lot of them deserve a lot more, a lot worse than that. So anyway, such is the such. Like, so I don't know that much about MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. But you know, like in general, she says better things than the rest of Congress usually, other, you know, other than her communist rhetoric, you know, McCarthyite bullshit. And like she has, you know, the same stupid talking points that most right wingers have, but she's also populist enough to like raise the issue of like you know, baby formula and bodily autonomy and like stuff like that. So, you know, on paper, and he was talking also. Jimmy Dore was talking about Rand Paul, and so he was saying he's like it's not even just that like, you know, Republicans are doing this. It's that the most crazy right wingers like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Rand Paul are doing this. But it's like fucking dumb, you know, because like if he knew anything about anything, like he would know that Rand Paul has been like agreeing with anti-war positions since he was, you know, a fetus, basically, him and his dad, you know, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's been standing up to the, at least rhetorically, she's been standing up to the, um, you know, for the people on a bunch of issues. That's her claim to fame, like that's what she's known for. That's why the Democrats hate her, she's like a demagogue. She's like trying to, like, and it's, it is dangerous in the sense that she is rhetorically so great that some people might actually, naively put their faith in her and then, get taken for a ride or something. But as long as you realize like nobody in Congress can be trusted, um, then at least rhetorically, like it should be no surprise that she said good things because that's what she does. That's why she's like demonized. She's the one person who says the things that the average American thinks. But of course, she couches it in this McCarthyite rhetoric. So yeah, the same with Rand Paul. It's like, and he should, I mean, at least he should know that about Rand Paul. But I feel like sometimes, Jimmy Dore plays dumb, because he doesn't want people to realize like how out of the box he's been thinking, or I don't know, maybe he's because he's trying to like pitch it to a leftist audience, so he's trying to speak from their perspective or something. I don't know, but I think he is really conflicted too, because if you look at what he did and said, uh what he said about and did to Alex Jones, and even said about him recently, you can tell that like he still has a lot of the same like, uh contrived like pseudo leftist assumptions that a lot of people have just based on the kind of mindless partisanship that's meaningless. But he's better than most, so that's good. um but it's like people like Jimmy Dore's like the first step in the direction that we need to go, basically. Like he may be like a bridge or a million bridges too far for like, the normies and the whatever, like the establishment, but like um but yeah, he's really just like the first step of what needs to of where people need to get their heads in terms of like opposing tyranny and like, you know, holding our overlords to account and everything. Um, and like, and getting past all the lies and deceptions about like, all the illusions about that, oh, all the Republicans are like this and the Democrats are like this, and pretending that the parties actually stand for anything other than like the donor class that owns both parties. Like if the parties really stood for something that was opposed to each other, then they probably wouldn't be owned by the same banks, like usually you're not going to own two things that are diametrically opposed. Um, so, anyway, like, but Jamie Dore is pretty woke on that. And I think he does probably more than almost anybody to like wake people up about that, uh, on the left, especially. So, you know, that's good. But it is cringe when he goes from the like shit lib, TV presumptions about people instead of like using common sense and being like, yes, of course, this is how Rand Paul is. He's libertarian, and he's always been anti-war. So, um, but whatever. Anyway, I just, I finished reading that Legends of the Egyptian Gods, Hieroglyphic Texts and Translations by E.A. Wallace Budge. And, it's just like, well, I noticed one part he says that Nephthys is Aphrodite. So that makes sense because I think that Isis and Nephthys are both Venus, which is Aphrodite, like Isis being Venus rising, Nephthys being Venus setting, and then they're both called the Sisters of Mot. So Mot is when they um it's maybe Venus overhead, like Venus, yeah, like not sure what the name for that is, but like between rising and setting, maybe she becomes Mot, and it's like when the two goddesses are shown, like when one is in front of the other, then they become the dual goddess of Mot. Um, but anyway, I saw the movie The Northman, and like I won't. Well, I don't know. I might give some spoilers. I'll try not to give too much spoilers, but it's just like it's kind of hard not to give spoilers because it's a like 10,000-year-old story. So like if you are acquainted with, I mean, it's the story of Hamlet. So it's like if you yeah, like the main character's name is Amleth, but it's, that's a more accurate pronunciation of Hamlet. And like the most accurate or the original version of the name may have been Omlodi. Um, but it's a story that's um, about astronomy. It's about it seems it's probably about the different constellations. Um, like the path through the zodiac, basically, and it's overlaps with the story of King Arthur. I'm not sure if King Arthur. Yeah, I think maybe Arthur plays the same role as Hamlet. Um, it's the same story as Kai Khusrau of the Persians. It's the same story as in Eastern Europe. Um, I forget the name, but it's like there's all these strange elements in this story, and it has all the hallmarks of mythology. Um, and mythology tends to be astronomy slash astrology. So um, yeah, I'm not sure if Hamlet is a celestial body or if he's simply traveling through the sky and interacting with and temporarily becoming celestial bodies or constellations. Um, but it seems that he's associated with, I mean, at least certainly in the Northman film, he's associated more with Mercury, Odin, because he's all about Odin, and then his enemies, his uncle support worships Freya, I believe. So yeah. So like Freya, I'm not even sure what Freya is. I think Freya might be the male version of Frigg. Like Frigg is Venus, and Freya is Frigg's brother. But it might be a similar thing like with Isis and Nephthys, where Frigg is Isis rising and Freya is Isis setting. Um, so that would make sense in this case. Like, and it's all about this battle between Hamlet and, or in this, he's called Amleth. So Amleth, and his uncle, I forget what his uncle's name is, but it's this also the same story as Caesar and Brutus. So like the story of Brutus, the Roman story, is partly mythological. Like parts, at least parts of this Brutus story are astrology because it's the same because they contain all these elements that are exactly the same as King Arthur and Hamlet and Wainamoinen and Kai Khusrau and all this stuff. And so, like it seems, a lot of it is based on they're doing battle, like Hamlet or Amleth, his father is killed by his uncle. And so I'm not sure if he is Odin. I'm not sure who the father of Odin would be. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure. But it might relate also to the story of like Osiris and Horus, because Osiris is killed by Seth. He's killed by his brother Seth, and then he's avenged by his son Horus. And so, in this sense, Horus, seems to correspond potentially to Hamlet. Um, so yeah, it's not entirely clear who exactly they are, but at least in this film, it certainly associates Hamlet with Mercury and his enemy with what seems to be a Venus setting. And so and then they're like fated to do battle at the gates of hell. And I thought it was good that they used the same method as me of just translating hell with two L's. There's a lot of people when they are studying Norse stuff, they try to like put a huge distinction between the Norse hell and the modern idea of hell. Um, and of course, the ideas about hell are very different now, but the word is not different. Like people think like, oh no, but that's hell with one L, and this is hell with two L's, so there's really no connection. But like, no, that's dumb. Like it's the same word. You can spell it either way, and people did spell it interchangeably like throughout history. And of course, like they didn't even use these letters to spell it for most of history. They used runes. So like so they're like destined to battle at the gates of hell. And um but it's funny, like it says at the black gates of hell. But then at the end of the day, like it's kind of accurate because the gates of hell that they battle at are in it's like they go to Iceland. And um but and Iceland is the gate of hell, gateway of hell. It's the first gateway really of the eastern side of hell of America. And um but they mistranslate when they call it the gates of hell because the gates of hell are more than one place. There's 9 gates, and you had to travel really far between each gate. So, modern people think of this idea like the gates of heaven, the gates of hell, as if it's just one gate, but for some reason called gates. But no, it's like because they're very far from each other, the different gates, and each gate represents a separate region. And, like the gates of heaven would be like the entrance into the spheres of each planet. So there's 7 gates of heaven to enter into the spheres of each of the 7 visible planets. Um, but also like, hell is always said to be accessed, by in the Norse religion, they always say it's accessed by traveling north. And so, that of course makes sense that then they went to Iceland because that is the way, it's literally, for thousands of years, people have island hopped from, Europe to Iceland to Greenland to Newfoundland to Nova Scotia to Labrador, etc. And it's just the obvious way. If you're in the northern hemisphere, then it's quicker, like contrary to what it looks like on a flat map, like it's much quicker to travel over the North Pole and as long as it's in summer or whatever. Um, so so that's kind of accurate that they place hell in the gates, the quote unquote gates of hell in Greenland, or I mean in Iceland, but then um, they try to interpret it or portray it as like that it's like a volcano in Iceland. Iceland has a lot of volcanoes. It's covered with ice. And so they're saying basically that because it's an active volcano, therefore it's the gates of hell because, they're treating hell as if it's like what modern retards think that it's something underground. I mean, whatever, what modern people are uh, taught, which is that it's underground. And so that's of course inaccurate, but it's like, I mean, it's partly going off of the actual like ancient texts that say um, that the gateway to hell, that there's fire and ice and darkness or something. But like the fire isn't, I don't think it's uh, literal. I think that's symbolic, that usually the fire means uh, sunset, and then bronze, uh, or maybe ice means sunset and fire means sunrise. Anyway, it's like there's symbolic stuff in there, so it's not all actual things you would see. Um, but yeah, they got Bjork in there, she was pretty hot. They got the like werewolf guy from like whatever show that was, True Blood, I guess. And so, it's interesting, but it's just sad that everybody who sees it is going to think that that's just a story of like Norse history or Norse people or whatever. No, the Norse people are not. I mean, they were pretty degenerate and messed up, at least in some of the Vikings, I guess, you know, but not as bad as the gods, like this is mythology. So it's like whenever people confuse mythology for reality, it just makes reality that much more like fucked up and degenerate because, you know, you're you're like, especially if people try to use the gods as any kind of role model, because the gods are not, you know, they're as degenerate as they can possibly be, just for the reason that the stories exist just to memorize the cycles of these planets and stuff. So the more degenerate, the more memorable it is. But, the danger is once, you know, people are cut off from the actual meaning of it. Now you have all these modern people who actually think all this is literal, and they're like, yeah, Norse, this is like my Norse people, this is what we do. And like, no, this is like a totally mythological story about planets and stars. Um, so like all the crazy things that the ancient gods did, they're always killing each other, they're always raping each other, they're always like, they have no morals really, like the ancient gods for the most part. It's not like modern religion where it's all about morality. Like real religion, real traditional religion for the last like 10,000 years was just like really degenerate stories about planets and just stuff that would stick in your head because you're like, wow, that's fucked up. Um, but yeah, I think it's dangerous now that people still have all those same stories and almost all the fiction is based on it, but yet they think it's literal or they think it's just imagination. They don't realize that the point of it. So, if it was just imagination, they would come up with much more positive stories. You know, if it was just to entertain people and just to make people feel good and educate people about morals, then it would be completely different stories. But people don't realize that, so they cling on to these myths without comprehending their import. Um, anyway, I think it's dangerous, but what isn't nowadays? All right, guess I'll leave it there. But yeah, anyway, take care, everybody.